Why, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Innovantage podcast, where business meets tech to bring you your competitive edge. As always, I'm your host, Max, and it is my ongoing job and duty to explore that edge between business and tech and to find out what lurks between those two things, to find out some interesting things for you to hear and discuss. Today's episode is a very interesting one. Today we're going to be talking about politics, about how politics influence technology and what kind of regulation drives technology forward, and whether technology goes fast and first, and whether regulation follows fast enough. We will be touching many interesting topics, specifically eIDAS, for example, 2.0. We'll be talking about the Declaration of Leuven, and we are going to be talking it through the prism of a career Belgian politician, the State Secretary for Digitalization, Mathieu Michel. Welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to discuss about the wonderful world of future.
So tell us a little bit about yourself first. So what is your current role or current roles? What are you responsible for? And how did you even arrive to this place in your career?
Okay, so I'm former Secretary of State of Digitization. I was in the government 8 months ago. Now I am member of the parliament here in Belgium, and I'm really focused on innovation, on technology, blockchain, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, everything who has got a big influence on democracy, on future, on economic. So that's something really it drives me. Since long, I'm engaged in the way technology has an impact on the people, and the way the politics can bring trust and confidence in the innovation. That's something really important, because I think that if we want innovation to bring opportunities, positive opportunities, it has to be built in trust. And that's the point since the beginning of humanity. Fire, it burns, but also it can warm you if you are. And so that's a little bit the point today with technology, I think.
That's a very interesting way of looking at technology. So interconnected with humanity and so important to it. So why did you decide to focus on technology yourself? Is it just inherent kind of interest in technology, or is it just belief in the future of it, or something else?
I'm a liberal in Belgium, and I think that being liberal is believing in the mankind, the people, and what they are able to do in a positive way. And as an optimistic person, I'm really I'm impressed by the way who mankind can always find new solutions, new things to make life easier, happier. That's something that drives me every day. And to my point, humanity is confronted to a lot of challenges about climate change, mobility, healthcare system, and so on. And I believe that the fact that we can go forward with an optimistic way is way better than coming back. Than coming back. And a lot of people confronted to challenges, they are afraid and they go back. I think that when we are confronted to challenges, we need to be creative, to be innovative, and to find solutions. And when we speak about cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, it will bring a lot of questions and maybe a lot of problems. That's not a reason to go backwards. It's a reason to be creative and to find solutions.
That's very nicely put. I feel that that's a very kind of prudent issue in this day and age. So a lot of people, I feel, kind of try to regress. There's a lot of movements in politics towards the extremes, right? And I think more towards the right side of the spectrum of the extremes rather than the left side of the spectrum. And I feel that what you've mentioned, that fear, that hesitancy, that desire to go back a little bit to where things were more comfortable, were more understandable is a huge part of it. So
Let- Let's see what happened with the AI Act in Europe.
yeah,
You know, that's really important to see how artificial intelligence can have influence on the democracy. And what we did in Europe was regulating AI with a regulation we started, I think, 4 years ago. So we started to speak about regulating AI 4 years ago. And the AI Act will only be applicable in 1 year. So count 5 years to speak about a technology which is evolving so fast. And so it's important to have regulation to bring trust. But
yeah,
it's in the meantime so important to accompany technology, not to stop technology, not to take too much time to bring to difficulties to technology. So that's why I think that regulation, people, politicians, sorry, has to be more aware of what technology can bring as an opportunity. And we must not stop technology. We must accompany technology with a positive way, I think. And that's really what drives me.
that's a very good example as well, because I've talked about the AI Act with several people on the show before, with both politicians and non-politicians. And I think the overall consensus, at least with the people I've talked to, and my own personal consensus, is that this particular act is a net positive because it comes from a place of not restricting or limiting the possibility for innovation, but rather serving kind of as a guardrail of what to be aware of, the risks that are inherent to any technology that we understand right now already, and the risks that may be active and realistic in the future. So it kind of helps you frame your mind even a little bit. It helps you put yourself on a pathway to a more responsible use of any given technology. Like, you can still be on the more risky side, and the act regulates that, but it kind of gives you the tools necessary, at least, to understand the limitations of a technology and what you can, and or rather what you should or should not do. So what's your opinion? Like, is that the good example of a regulation, of an implementation for an, fringe technology, or there's something left to be desired?
I would say that it could have been, yeah, better than that. I think that the way we approach the AI regulation with the level of risk is interesting, but in the meantime, I think that we restricted a little bit too much the innovation. When we speak about artificial intelligence in Europe, we are not alone. And we see that there is a lot of competitivity between the continents, countries in building, good AI. And so
Sure.
if in Europe we are too naive in what it will bring as an impact in the society, we take the risk to stay backward in terms of technology and innovation. So that's something. So I think that about the AI Act, using the level of risk was something interesting. But in the meantime, there is a little bit too much restriction in the way we can deploy AI. So that's a little bit, that's an habit in Europe. When we are afraid of something, we restrain that thing. And that's precisely, in my point, as a liberal, what I'm convinced we must struggle against. And okay, there is maybe problems that could occur, but we need to accompany that, not stop that. That's the big issue. And it's always the same when you speak about fake news, harassment on the internet, and so on. There is always the temptation to forbid the things more than to accompany them. Look at the fake news, for example. I'm really concerned about the temptation of some to build some kind of ministry of truth. Some people will say, okay, that's the truth, that's not the truth. Oh, I don't want to live in some world who people know what is truth, the truth, and people who must obey to what is true. That's Orwell in 1984. I don't want to live in that kind of world.
True, but some would argue that the pervasiveness of fake news, as you call them, right, where people just tell lies and then make the truth out of that. That's also the way a ministry of truth can be built. Like, the
I
party
think that
says
what
that we are at war with Eurasia today, and tomorrow we are at war with East Asia, and we have always been at war with East Asia, and that has never been the other way around. That's basically also out of 1984.
Yeah, I think that what we must do is to what I mentioned was to say, as an optimistic person, I believe in the capacity of the people to think, but we need to give them tools to be able to think. So education is something really important. The way we can, and we will speak about that later probably, the way we can give to someone the ability to recognize who is interacting with, for example, with the correct identity, with the correct responsibility. Uh, Actually, to bring back some tools for the people they use in the real world and to take them in the digital world. I think that's the way we can build and rebuild trust in the interaction digital world. And what we are speaking when we speak about AI, fake news, harassment, and the social media and so on, what we are speaking about is the fact that the digital world was built in another way than the real world, with anonymity, with the fact that you cannot be sure with whom you are speaking with, and so on. And that's why I think we must bring back some tools for the people to apply their own capacity to think. That's something important for me. And then if you give to the people the capacity to think and the tools for the capacity to think by themselves, you can trust them and you can help them to understand the digital world, and then they can make their own decision. There is something interesting. I don't know if you know Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt was a philosopher.
Mm.
And Hannah Arendt said, if the facts disappear, if we live in a world without facts, there cannot be any opinion anymore. And that's something interesting. And that's why I think we should be concerned by the way some use fake news, use lies, because all those fake news, those lies, it brings, no, it doesn't bring, it kills actually the facts and the idea of the
Yes.
facts of something which is really objective. And if there is no facts anymore, then you cannot have opinions. You cannot think by yourself. And so that's, I think, an important point in the way the democracy are evolving right now.
I definitely agree with that. Like the loss of objective truth is something that we've seen just happen, right? Like even, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, we had a more kind of monolithic culture where people agreed on most things, where, some things are true. But then over the last kind of 15, 10 years, we've seen the rise of fake news. We've seen the rise of fringe group. We've seen the rise of kind of bubbles where, everybody tells everybody what they want to hear, and objectiveness no longer exists. It's still out there, of course. There are still things that are objectively true, that are peer reviewed, that are proved. But then some people just don't want to engage with that. And to kind of segue into our main discussion, you mentioned it a little bit already, responsibility and digital identity. So let's discuss that. How do you feel responsible digital identity can help in this current socioeconomic climate?
Okay, it will maybe a little bit philosophizing, but I will try to make it simple. Um, I, I'm convinced that every people's identity is based on two particular pillars: our freedom, what we want to do as people, and the freedom of doing anything, but also the responsibility in the fact that if I'm free to do something, what I will do can have an impact on someone, and that impact on someone else is the responsibility I have. Okay. When we built the internet was built anonymous. That was a good thing because the internet was built to have access to knowledge, but in anonymity. Okay, anonymously. But being anonymous somewhere make you not responsible. If you walking down in the street and you won't see the people wearing a mask, uh, you will see people you can interact with and knowing who they are. And so I think that's something really important, because when we speak about the identity of someone and those two pillars, freedom and responsibility, it is, to my point, what will build their own identity on the internet. And if I am not responsible on the internet, it's only what I want to say without responsibility, then I think that it can bring, shadow content. It can bring violence. It can bring harassment. It can bring fake news. You cannot verify if the people who said something about something else, something about someone, is he aware of that point? Is he a specialist of that point? Is he an expert of that point? And so freedom of speech is really important. And so anybody can say anything about anything. But when I mentioned that we need to have tools for the people to think, but if I speak about digitization, it's my job. I think that, well, okay, I can be more understood by some than if I would speak about, I don't know, classical dancing. I'm not an expert in classical dancing. And so knowing that a point is expressed by someone who can be verified can give another value to what he said. And I think that it is by bringing back those kind of tools for the people that we can help them to make their own decision. And that's something really important, because we are not there to think for the people. We are there to give them the tools to think by themselves. And I'm a little bit scared that technologies and innovation, artificial intelligence, bring something, I don't know what, algorithms and so on, which think for the people. And that's my fear. I think that we must be conscious that humanity must be strength in a world where the temptation is to think for them. I hope that it's clear, because it's maybe has to be complicated, but that's my point. And that's why identity is really important, because identity can reconnect someone to what he say, or someone to what he do, and he does. And that's something really important. I will finish by an example, something really crazy. What happened a few days ago, 3 weeks ago. You know, you saw, I think, some Altman stealing something in the market. But that's a false video to promote SOA2. SOA2, which is a new artificial intelligence algorithm, which is crazy, which is really, which is, it's frightening. And I think that it brought something completely new in the way we must see the what we see, actually. Is the fact that by default, future will be false. By default, what we will see in the future will make us doubt of the fact that it really exists. And so the change of paradigm is more searching the true than living in the false. I don't know if it is clear, but and I think that's what will happen when you will see a video, a picture, something which looks a little bit strange. Okay, by default it's false. Now I have to verify if it could be actually true. That's something crazy, because that's precisely what I mentioned with Hannah Arendt, and the fact that if there is no more facts, there is no opinion. But if the thirst of humanity is to search the truth through the capacity to identify that, then we bring back the facts in the capacity for the people to think by themselves. Okay.
It's a good notion. I definitely agree with the kind of the need for a more responsible internet, a more responsible digital world. And as in the example that you've mentioned about videos about Sam Altman, these are just kind of, the obvious examples. We have a lot of examples of, huge bot farms that are influencing public discourse every single day, and they are unnoticeable, untraceable, because algorithmically driven platforms prioritize engagements, and the most engaging emotion is anger.
Yeah.
So they promote anger. So every single discussion about every single thing you now have is going to be polarizing. So for example, I have like a bright jacket, you have a blue jacket, and that's just ripe for discussion. We're going to have like half of people arguing that blue is better, half of people arguing that gray is better, and it's going to be a huge, huge, huge discussion. But why? Because that's just inherent to the systems that we are in. So from your perspective, like from a as a real person that is going to use the internet somewhere in the future, should your philosophy be applied, what exactly changes? Do I have to kind of enter my government's ID before I even can connect to the internet? Or are there going to be kind of specialized safe spaces that require some form of identification, and kind of you have, some responsibility to be present in those spaces? Or how do you see that?
Okay. So actually, your jacket looks really fantastic.
Thank you very much. So does yours.
Yep. So actually, I think that it must be we must build a method which is efficient, and that's what we tried to do those last years. First of all, I think that if you want to bring back responsibility in the digital world, you must see how responsibility is built in the real world. And how is it built in the real world? It is simple. We are part of countries, we are citizens of countries, and we are responsible in front of the country. Why? Because the country is the society we are living in. And so if you commit a crime, if you drive too fast and so on, you are responsible in front of the society through who you are and the citizenship who was given to you by the government. That's the responsibility, something really important. Yep. So how do we reconnect your responsibility in the society, in the digital world? We need to know who you are when you are interacting in the digital world. If we want, and that's important, not always, but if we want to reconnect you to your responsibility, we need to know who you are. And to know who you are, we need to have technological standards which can reconnect your analog identity in the digital world, so with your digital identity. And that's what we built with a regulation called eIDAS. eIDAS is a European regulation which gives standards to build application which can guarantee in the digital world who you are. It means that through the use of those technical standards used by some applications, in Belgium, for example, it could be eIDAS, but in other countries it can be a local application which answer to those standards. It means that if you use those standards, there is the guarantee that who you are interacting with is a real person with a real responsibility. It means that you can sign a contract in the digital world, knowing that the people who you are with whom you are signing is a real person. It means as well that if you read, some article about some technical issue, I don't know, and that the one who signed that article really exists, is maybe a professor in university and so on, but you can check that because it is signed. Okay, and so those standards bring back in the digital digital world the capacity to reconnect to responsibility and to knowing who you are interacting with. It's a huge change because it doesn't mean that that anyone cannot speak about anything. It's just bring the fact that you can check who said that. It looks simple, but it's not simple to say who said that. When did he say that? Okay, and so the regulation eIDAS builds common standards. Based on that standard, you have application. It could be private application or public application. For example, in Belgium, I decided to build, when I was Secretary of State, some application called MyGov. MyGov is a digital wallet where we're fitting a digital identity, which can be used for some application. And then once you have your standards, your application, you decide to see when application you use that standard. It means that, for example, for Facebook, Facebook could decide to use that standard or no. That's really important because that standard is not an obligation. It's not mandatory to use. Absolutely, I don't see that on any other interaction. People has to be responsible or to be identifiable, and that's precisely what we made with the Declaration of Leuven. We said with those standards, with those applications, we decide in Europe to standardize three kinds of identification. First one is verified profile. Second one is verifiable profile, like pseudonymity, for example. And the third one is being anonymous. So we don't forbid the capacity to be anonymous, but we build tools which can be used for the people who want to use it, or for platforms who want to use it to make the difference between those three profiles. And so to take back the example of Facebook, we could imagine that you have a filter on Facebook, and you could click on Facebook and saying, okay, no, I just want to see on my wall people who are recognized, people who are verified, or people who are anonymous. Okay, and it changed everything you will see, because if through the filter you can automatically identify if the people are anonymous, verifiable, verified, and no, it changed the experience you are confronted. And here I speak about the example of Facebook, but imagine that example with receiving an email, and you know that the email was sent by someone who is verified as well and responsible through the connection to his mailbox, through his identity, is beginning to become something completely new. Take the example for the build of an algorithm in artificial intelligence, for example. We speak a lot about what will be our responsibility in using AI. With that kind of tool, you could, in the metadata of an algorithm, you could find the people who used the first algorithm of AI, and then who it was changed in the time. Okay, and take a picture. You take a picture with a camera, but you could sign the picture, saying, okay, I am responsible for the picture I took, and so by signing that picture, I can guarantee that I am responsible for it. Okay, that's a little bit the point.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I do appreciate the different levels to the regulation where, not everybody is responsible for everything all the time, especially when everything is so dynamic, like things change, opinions change, environments change, and you don't want to be responsible for something that you said when you were like 16, for example. People are generally very dumb when they're 16 and they do and say a lot of dumb things. So you would probably not want that to be connected to you throughout your like 40s or something. So the ability to stay anonymous and do some dumb things in a separate environment, one that is not polluted with everything else, sounds like a good idea. But
If I could
there,
maybe add something, oh,
yeah,
excuse, if I could maybe add something about what you say,
sure,
it that people are not aware of two important different identity we can have. And I like to make the difference between a profile and an identity. That's something really important. When I am on PlayStation or on Facebook or I don't know in some kind of forum, I don't know, I use a profile. Okay, a profile
yeah,
makes me not responsible. It's just a profile. Okay, but the difference, and that's precisely the difference between a profile and an identity. The identity makes me responsible of what I do, of what I make. Okay, it doesn't mean that if I have a profile, I won't ever be responsible. But if I want to be responsible, there must be a search to find back my IP and so on to verify who it was who said or who made something. And that's a big difference between a profile. Profile, you can be anyone you want to be through a profile. But an identity, that's what we connect you to the responsibility as part of the society of sorry, but it was something really important to add.
yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point. I definitely agree that the distinction needs to be made, and I feel that a good example of what you're describing, a connection between a profile and an identity, is something for in my daily life. For example, I use car sharing services. You have an app, you install it, you have a bunch of cars, you just walk alongside the streets, you open up, you drive, right? But if I, God forbid, if I hit something or somebody, if I destroy somebody's property or if I harm somebody, I am easily connected to that app because they have my driver's license, they have my personal identification, they have my insurance information. So, anything that happens is immediately connected to me. But if I were anonymous, if I could just, choose any car and nobody would connect it to me, then, what stops me from, I don't know, just driving recklessly at the very least? Nobody could identify that it was me. And then the
That's
service would be
precisely the point.
impossible. Yeah.
That's precisely the point. And we know that every day there are new applications which could engage our responsibility. Okay,
Yeah.
and in a big way or in a small way. And my point go a little bit further is the fact that even violence in the in the way you speak with someone, you won't go on court because you will be a little bit bad with someone. But even the fact that we connect your responsibility to that, I think will a little bit slow down the aggressivity of some, because it bring back in the digital world some social code that we have in the real world.
Sure. Sure. I agree with that as well. Like, there is a fine line, of course, that we discussed in the beginning, right? Like, both roads can lead to the ministry of truth, just in a different direction. If you build a surveillance state where everybody is constantly under surveillance, under control, and every single word is being watched, it is also a bad situation. But the same thing is true about complete anarchy, where everybody can say anything and words mean nothing and no responsibilities apply to anybody. That leads to fake news, that leads to, well, a lot of bad things as well. So both extremes are bad, and
Yeah.
some responsibility is definitely required. And I can definitely attest to the fact that um, Well, there is a lot less responsibility than there should be probably online. Like, I agree that,
That's my point. That's my
yeah,
point. And if you look at the real world, it took hundreds of years to find a good balance between freedom of speech, social control, responsibility. It took a long time to build that from century to century. But the acceleration we knew about as an impact of digitization on the society, it went so fast that the codes have changed. And so that's why I mentioned the fact that the idea that internet was anonymous took back the responsibility for a while.
yeah,
And that's what unleashed some kind of freedom of speech, freedom of anything we could say about anything. And that's precisely what you mentioned a few minutes ago. That brought, to my point, some polarization in the way democracy is evolving.
yeah,
That brought with it some new kinds of impact on democracy. We see that in the United States, for example. Donald Trump, to my point, is really the son of what we bought in the digital world.
yeah,
Polarization. We don't know what is true anymore. That's the rules of the stronger. That's a little bit what we bought. And I think that on the long term, it could be, I hope not, but it could be really a threat for democracy of tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, indeed. I also follow the US politics a little bit, not too closely, but it is frightening, honestly, the level of polarization that exists and the kind of that for every single thing that happens, there's two opinions on whether or not it happened and how it happened and what is the meaning of why it happened. And I cannot envision a good future coming from that kind of mindset. Some changes need to happen.
You know what we are doing right now, you and me, and maybe the people who are following us right now, it's a little bit, yeah, being in resistance to. I think that's what we need to build: democracy and the inertia. I don't know if inertial, the way democracy is evolving, we won't stop it with pushing in a button. But we need to think about it and to see how we can bring back that responsibility, which will slow down that polarization. But we mentioned the United States. That's not only in the United States. We see that in Italy. We see that in France. We see that even in Belgium.
Yeah.
The fact the people, will prefer to hear black or white more than the gray, the nuance of gray. 50 Shades of Grey, for example. So that's that's something that must question us, but that's something that must leave us aware in the fact that we must remain proactive and determined to protect democracy through that responsibility, through bringing back the responsibility in the digital world.
That is a very lofty goal and one that I can definitely agree with. So coming back to some specifics, then you've mentioned the three levels of anonymity, pseudonymity, and identity, right? So how do you feel a balance can be struck between the three? Is it a very strict determination where you have like one profile, two profile, three profile, or where you have specific spaces that are disconnected from each other? How does balance is achieved here? What do you think?
As I mentioned, I'm a liberal, so I think that we must build the tool. The tool is knowing, having the ability to know who I'm interacting with, and then we let the people use it or no. Okay, it means that if Facebook will propose to his community to use it to identify themselves, that's the choice of YouTube, the Facebook, sorry, but that would be the choice of the user as well. And so you use the tool, and then you see if it's used or no. I think that we must respect the freedom of the people to use it. And if it's useful, if it brings something positive to use your verified identity, if it changes the community you are interacting with, and if it changes it with in a good way, then but for other application, if you think it's interesting to be only anonymous to unleash the freedom of speech, it could also be interesting. And maybe that for some reason you sometimes you will want to be anonymous, and for saying something else you would want to be verified. That's good. Okay, it's like building a hammer, and you decide if you use it, you use the hammer and to do what. That's the point. But to be complete, for some application, we could consider that it would be an obligation, for example, and maybe not to share everything of your identity, but just a part of your identity. For example, we can make mandatory the fact that you must show that you are above 18 years old or under 18 years old. So that tool could also be used to verify the age majority of a child who would try to access a porno website, for example. You see? So you could imagine that with that kind of tool, it's a universal tool just to be able to verify if needed, or if it's wishable, to verify who or if your identity responds to some criteria. That's a little bit the part.
Yeah, but specifically for age verification, for example, there is a lot of debate right now going on the new legislation in the UK, as far as I'm aware. They introduced new levels of age verification and some form of digital identity online. And the main kind of counterpoint that I hear, I'm not from the UK, I don't live there, so I don't really have a horse in this race. But from what I hear in the discourse is that there isn't really a lot of trust in those systems. Like, why should I, as a citizen, give my personal data to some company somewhere and I should trust them that they will not misuse my data, sell it to some third party, have a leak happen, or just very naturally, I maybe do not want to share some identity details about myself, especially right now with, for example, if you're an immigrant and immigration laws changing all the time, like, are you safe identifying yourself as an immigrant in that sort of an environment? And, you don't need me to tell you the examples of misidentification that have happened in Europe throughout the last century, for example. So how do you feel those kinds of concerns? Should they be addressed? Are they valid or no?
Those are important concerns, I think, and that's our task to make sure that the people can trust the way we use those kind of tools. That's something important. I think that what will happen, and that's why eIDAS is interesting, because eIDAS bring the standards to make the authentication. And eIDAS will be used by private companies, but by governments as well. But eIDAS is not there to control you. eIDAS is just there to trustly identify who you are, or to trustly identify if you are major, if you have the age, or truly identify if you live in a country. It's what eIDAS does actually is to bring some trust in what you say about you. Okay, and eIDAS was built to be a privacy by default, actually, and so that's the way it's built. But can we avoid completely people who are scared of digitization or who are afraid of control of the people? We cannot avoid that. But what I know and how it was designed, I know because I was participating to the negotiation of eIDAS. We built eIDAS to be completely privacy by default. We just built eIDAS to make trustworthy what you said about you, and to make people aware that what you said was the truth. And actually, when I mentioned the facts that we need to bring back facts in the digital world, that precisely what we did with eIDAS. And so when we build that, we build a tool which can bring back responsibility for the people who want to use it, or for some application who wants to use it, or from some application who the user that would be mandatory, like the porn website, but it could be as well for accessing your bank account, or And I think that in the future, then there will be websites who will consider that their internal policy is to only give the word, the voice, to people who check themselves through a verified identity. For example, if you take the website of the Washington Post, for example, or any other kind of newspaper, they could say, okay, we got a forum where people can speak, can give their opinion or an article, but we want that those people to be verified, just to be sure that it's not only a shadow content shouted by anonymous haters and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. From my own personal experience living here in the Baltics, for example, we have a lot of interconnectivity through digital identity. Like, we have it streamlined, and we have different ways of accessing that digital identity. So the mainstream ones, like, for example, you have a governmental controlled application that is connected to your identification, and every single action that you take goes through that application. So you have PIN codes throughout that app. So if anything, anywhere, at any point, for any reason, wants to access your digital identity, you have to approve it. So that's kind of, it puts people at ease. I know that it puts me at ease because, if even I want to do something, it is annoying personally, from like a usage perspective, but I understand why it's there. Because if I want to access my bank, I need to go through the app. If I want to, I don't know, like schedule an appointment for like immigration service, I need to go through the app. If I want to do something that is interacting with me as a digital citizen, I need to go through the app. But that builds trust in the application itself, because I know that it is not built or being controlled by a third party somewhere in the US, for example, because that would have put me in a very uneasy position. But since it's here, it's local, it's controlled, I can understand, and I have some control over which platforms and which spaces get access to that kind of identity and which ones do not. So that, I feel, helps build trust. That's my main point of the anecdote, basically.
Of course, but for some people, they trust governments, and for some people they trust Google, and for some people they trust their bank. I don't care, as long as they trust something. I'm good. And so, because trust, wherever it comes from, is really important for innovation. I can guarantee you that governments are really respectful of the data of their citizens. That's why I saw in Belgium. I cannot speak for other countries, but that's what I saw in Belgium. What you mentioned, there's specifically a project that I led some years ago called My Data, and the objective was showing to the people what we do with their data. And so in Belgium, any citizen can go on a platform knowing who accessed your data and for what purpose. That's something that's a basic for me. Okay. And if it makes trust for some, that's a good point. If people continue to be not to trust the government and their country, but if they trust Google or that's good for me as well. But what I'm sure of is the fact that I think that using data in algorithm will lead to have the ability to guarantee who you are for some application if you want to bring back that trust. Uh, it can come from governments, private company, I don't care, but trust and responsibility must come back into the world.
Then talking about Europe specifically, I feel that Europe is a great place for that sort of regulation to happen because Europe, in comparison to the US, for example, is much more forward with its regulation, generally speaking. But that, I believe, also poses a challenge. So you've mentioned Facebook, for example. Facebook is a private company owned by an American citizen. Um, how do we as Europeans trust that a company that gets access to our personal data through one way or the other and does not misuse that data? Does that mean that maybe we need our own European spaces disconnected from the American tech giants?
That's really a big question. I don't think that I have the correct answer. What I think is that if we bring in the digital world new new tools to yeah to have new experience of use in the internet, it could redefine the way we see social media communities and so on. For example, if Facebook doesn't want to use that kind of tool to reconnect responsibility for the user, you can imagine that tomorrow some company deploys something with that kind of standard of value in Europe, and then maybe that the people will follow, say, okay, I am tired to be only on Facebook, and I will go on a new social media platform where I see that we respect my responsibility, we respect the way we interact with some people. That's something interesting. When you see when Twitter became X, there are a lot of people who quit X only because the policy and the content policy of X changed. And so it can be something like so that would happen. The way you interact in LinkedIn, in Facebook, in Instagram, Snapchat, and so on, those are different kind of user experience. And so with that kind of tool, with verifiable or anonymous profile, you can imagine that a new business model emerged in Europe with a new social media. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my basically like next question towards the future. Do you believe that that sort of regulation will create opportunities for innovation for companies to step in and to provide particular spaces, particular, I know, verifiable channels, particular, maybe even devices that can help? Because I know that, for example, digital identity can be encrypted into a physical device, and you can just insert your digital identity key into a computer when you need it, and when you do not, you just remove it.
That's a perfect example of what could be deployed by a company, a startup. And so I'm sure that to speak from a business perspective, I'm sure that the economy, the market of the digital identity is huge, because there are so much opportunities in the digital world we cannot explore because of the lack of trust.
Yeah.
And so the trust is really basic to build interaction, to build new business models. So yes, the number of people, there is a huge amount of people who doesn't go on the digital markets just because they are afraid. They're afraid because they don't trust what's happening on the internet. And so, yeah, of course, there are a lot of business model. And obviously, I think that what's interesting in the eIDAS is that any kind of company can build those standards to help the people to authenticate themselves. I would be a little bit. It would be a little bit sad that only Google, Facebook, and Microsoft deployed those kind of application. I think
Yeah.
that it could be an opportunity for a lot of startups to emerge around application about digital identity. You could imagine. I give you an idea. For example, you could build easily with those standards a plugin to put on any mailbox, just to show that if you send an email to someone, is guaranteed by the startup which built an algorithm script based on the standard of eIDAS. So it's changed the world. Any email that you send to someone is verified with responsibility as a citizen. For me, in Belgium, for example. And so
that's a good idea.
Take the example of the problem of the phishing, spear phishing, and so on. Okay, but if you know that the people who send you something, that was your bank account, but signed by the people you know, which is the partner of your bank, it's limitless.
Yeah, true. And I believe that it's just a good time for like European tech to carve out a niche for itself. We were too long very comfortable using and outsourcing basically all the tech to the US. And now it creates some problems, like with the X example. So like the kind of, what was it, the original vision, the town square of the internet, I think Twitter was marketed as that initially. Now I wouldn't call it that. Now it's kind of a cesspool of something very different.
I think that what we just assume in Europe is that our value, the value that we share, could be, an opportunity in business model. In people considering that they would prefer to participate to business model which share the value of the European people. I'm not against the value of the United States, of China, and so on, but I think that in Europe we developed technology human-centered. And so, there is a joke in the international politics meetings, which said the data of the people in the United States, it belongs to the companies. In China, it belongs to the government. In Europe, it belongs to the people. It makes really a point for European people to say, okay, I would prefer to live in a world where I come from my own data. So that's what we must offer to the people. But do you know today an alternative to Facebook or to Instagram or to WhatsApp, which belongs to European company? No. So that's
Really?
and I think that based on that kind of tool, we could reconnect that. And there are a lot of wonderful startups who are listening to us right now, I'm sure. So let's get to work.
Well, hopefully, with some governmental help, they will be able to do that with subsidies, with grants, and with everything else. And I feel that Europe is stepping up more and more in later years, especially Belgium, honestly speaking. Like, specifically with Belgium grants, I feel that like a lot of startups that I talked to over the last years, like a couple of years, a lot of them have either received grants or applying for grants or have benefited from similar governmental programs. And none of that innovation could have been possible without some governmental help.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm a liberal, so I think that the economy must not succeed thanks to subsidies. Economy and business model must succeed because the idea and it finds investors in the private sector.
Of course.
That's the main point. And I think that the role and the job of the government is to create a positive context and to make regulation which can unleash the potential of the startups. I think that a good regulation is way better than good subsidies. because a light regulation, and that's maybe the weakest point of Europe. Europe has not light regulation. So Europe has regulation which protect the people and the value of the people. Okay, human centered, or whatever, GDPR, NIS2, eIDAS, and so on. But that regulation is really heavy for people, for startups. And so I think that the main the main help that could bring the government is by we're making lighter the regulation on the companies. And then the investment must go from the company, the investment bank. That's my point. And I'm sure that when you have a great idea, the investment comes.
Sure. I agree with that as well. Like, it does not mean that the government should finance every single idea that is out there. The startup world is pretty brutal, and 99% of startups fail within their first year or 3 years, definitely. So, it's a high risk, high reward kind of an environment where governmental money is not easily spent.
You know where the problem of investment comes it comes not from for a startup, even not for scale up, for the beginning of the scale up. It's between the scale up and a big company. When you must find investment from 10 millions, 100 millions of euros, something like that, it begins to become really complicated. And that's where the beautiful European startups go away and go to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not problem of subsidies. That's the problem of the fact that the European investors are not they are not hot in coming in the game through that kind of tickets. And that's the problem, because a lot of companies, and I see that in Belgium, the success of an entrepreneur is seen through the number of exits he made. So how many companies he drove to the moment he sold it. Yeah. And usually he sold it at an American company.
Yes.
And so we've got seeds of something, the beginning of new stories and big stories, and then straight to the United States. And that's true. And I think that our biggest problem comes from that.
True. That is a very succinct point. That is very important as well. Just the amount of capital available to startups in the US and the ease that you can get that capital, especially when you're a scale up and not a startup, is very different. And honestly, I have no answer to that. It is just bigger. They have more money available to spend. It's
complicated, but I think that's those are mainly based on new technologies they dare to step in. That's something really important. If you look at OpenAI 10 years ago, it was nothing. It was not Microsoft. Look at NVIDIA 10 years ago. So it doesn't mean that it's not possible for European company to become something really big. But we have got, I think, to focus on the next generation of innovation. But that's not what we are doing right now. I'm a blockchain believer, for example. I think that blockchain can bring something interesting in the application we can build on blockchain. Do you see in Europe a real support to blockchain?
No.
Why? Because some think that it could be loss of money. Of course, yes, because maybe that blockchain won't be the technology of tomorrow. And so maybe that we will lose it. But if you don't dare to try new things, you will always be late. The people who are in advance tried and dared to try something new without the conviction that it would work. And so cloud, we lost. Internet, we lost. Platform, social media, we lost. Blockchain, I don't know. Something else tomorrow, quantum computing. Computing, we are already a little bit late. Could we be the best in quantum computing? Why not? It's possible, but we must to believe in the future, therefore, and invest in what's not the standard today, but really the standard tomorrow.
True. I definitely agree with that. And that is, of course, a whole other discussion, unfortunately, that we don't have time for. The European climate for investment and what needs to happen and what kind of steps everybody needs to take from every side to make it happen. To kind of wrap up our discussion a little bit, I did want to ask you one more question. From my previous conversations with governmental officials, the topic of literacy came up a lot, and I feel that it is connected to what we discussed today as well. So, in order to understand the different levels, the 3 different levels of identification that you propose, in order to be more cognizant of what kind of platforms are worth spending your time on and which ones are just inherently maybe not the best ones, I feel that a certain level of technical literacy is required out of your typical user, out of the populace. And on top of that, what you've mentioned is the new technologies that come in that many people don't understand at all. So that literacy is also important. And basically, we always talk about either technological literacy or data literacy. And I feel that those two are also very important when it comes to eIDAS. And I wanted to ask your opinion. What do you feel, how it kind of role literacy plays in all of this?
What do you mean by literacy? I don't.
It
Maybe the
is,
word. I don't know.
yeah, it is basically the level of knowledge that you and I have, for example, like how aware of you, where your data goes, what kind of data is being collected about you, why, for what purpose. And the same goes for technologies, like what platforms are, owned by Americans, which ones promote engagement more than discourse, and so on and so forth.
Perfect. That's really an interesting question, because that's beside my activity as a politician, I developed an organization specific on that around education. That's education. I think
Education,
that's
indeed.
understanding what's happening in the digital world is not natural. That's what I mentioned when I say that the way digitization evolved so fast those last year didn't let us as humanity the ability to integrate the impact of digitization in the way we interact. And that's why the cornerstone of what we mentioned here and other topics is education. And not only education for young people, but for everybody. Because
Yeah.
when you see those just let's take the impact of AI. 2 years ago, we didn't speak about AI as we speak right now. The impact of AI is completely crazy. So we need to help people, and that's what I was saying when I said we must not think for them, but help them to think by themselves. We must educate the people to knowing how to deal with that. So it's like, I often take the example of being in the water. If you walk on the streets in the air, the physics you are encountering is not the same physics as you enter the water to swim.
Yeah.
And if you are in the digital world, it's like another kind of water. It means that what you will do will have another impact that if you had you would have done it in the real world. And that's education. That's true education. So when you speak about literacy, that only technical or governmental, it's helping people to use it, helping people to understand it. A few days ago, I was giving a presentation in some kind of cybersecurity convention, and I mentioned, okay, the people who understand digital world is really a minority. There is maybe 10% of the population who understand what we're talking about right now. So the biggest deal is to share that knowledge to people who doesn't understand anything. To my father, my mother, for their grandparents, because that's the world, how it is right now, and so we must help them to understand it. Otherwise, we build really a world for some and a whole world who isn't there for some others. That's something important, and we will do that through education. Education, the project I was talking about in Belgium, I developed, is called Citoyen Numérique, for the education to digital citizenship. And we are working right now, the Council of Europe, to develop one kind of program of education which could bring to the people some pillars of knowledge to have when they are on the internet. First, for example, your identity. How do you manage your identity on the internet? How do you manage your password on the internet? How do you manage your privacy on the internet? With respect with the people, so we must not take them for them people, but respecting what they know today and what they must know as a minimum to be able to be free in the digital world, to be educated citizen and in the way they will interact in the digital world.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great it's a very important part of the whole. And it's very nice to see that your organization is focusing on that specifically.
I
So
will give
hopefully
you
by the future it will happen better.
website so you can see how it's
Yeah, we'll
working.
put it down below in the description to the video so everybody can visit and check it out. So yeah, I think more or less we've covered everything that we wanted to cover. Thank you, Mathieu, very much for your time and for your insights. Where can people read more of you? Where can people find you besides the link down below to the organization?
And with website and so on, you will find everything of my life, but not everything of a big part.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you as well for tuning in and listening to our conversation today. I hope we have managed to educate you a little bit on the future of the digital identity of Europe, hopefully the world as well. Maybe you will find the limits of acceptable, and maybe you will point your own opinions that can be traced back to you and identify you as an expert in your own field. So thank you very much for listening. Do join us for the next ones, and bye-bye.